If you're a triathlete, Challenge Roth is an absolute necessity. I've just gotten back from the race and reflecting on it, it truly blew me away, and I can't quite put into words, but I'll give it a go throughout this video as to how epic it really was, from the race lead-in to the race itself. It was like a whole triathlon community came together all at once and just made the experience epic for everyone. I think I was a little bit naive coming into the race as to how big the event actually was, because everyone seemed to know this, but I kind of went there thinking that it was going to be a big race and that it was important and that Germany loved triathlon and therefore it was going to be kind of a big deal. But it really did take my breath away. And this is coming off of the back of long course weekend, which I pretty much said exactly the same thing. So fair play to long course weekend, because again, for a domestic race, really stood out to me. But this was just next level, international stage, just wow. Before I get properly stuck into the race though, I'm going to take you into a little bit of the behind the scenes before the race, the lead-in and kind of what I thought went well and what didn't. So obviously on the back of long course weekend, I actually took a long time to recover from it. I went away on the Thursday or Wednesday that week whilst I was trying to recover, so the travel didn't really do me that well. So for the rest of the week I was kind of here, there and everywhere trying to recover as best as possible. But I probably took my foot off the gas a little bit too much, because leading into race week, I'm usually coming in with a little bit of fatigue, which does help my system. Like naturally, I lean towards like a big carb burning monster, like really high lactic, this, that and the other. But keeping a little bit of fatigue in the system just dulls that down a little bit and allows me to access the correct energy system on the day. So coming off the gas, because I panicked about overdoing it in long course and then traveling and getting into race week, not feeling my best, probably meant that actually when I got to the race, because I'd over recovered, over freshened up, I probably wasn't in quite the right sort of energy state to get the most out of myself. And that was mainly to do with the swim, but we'll get onto that in a second. So I arrived on the Monday, and fortunately for me, I managed to stay with my manager, Nikolai, which was amazing. Like the accommodation was great, we were out of the way, like the scenery was epic for all the running that I did around there. The training on the week leading in was fine. I was really happy with how it went actually. My body came around nicely and I felt very prepared at the end of the day for the race itself. Now when I went to see the expo, this is what first blew me away, I think, it was. It was the biggest expo I've ever seen, and I went to 70.3 Worlds in Lahti last year, and this completely blew it out of the water. It was completely different. Like, there were so many brands there that I don't know which brands weren't there, to be quite honest. It was just ridiculous, and it was so nice to be able to go around, like, meet some of the partners that I work with and also meet new partners. So yeah, hopefully those maybe come to fruition in something for next year, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way, met Bob Babbitt, had an interview with him. Again, just surreal experience. I think that in my head, that's kind of preserved for like the higher echelons of, or the upper tiers of the triathlon world, not necessarily me, but it's really nice to be invited to go and talk to him and have a little interview there. I think that's somewhere on YouTube if you want to check it out. Then yeah, doing a little bit of networking and just making the most of the environment and atmosphere. Now, pre-race day, forgot my run bag, so I had to drive back, get that sorted, get it back down into transition, and that was a little bit stressful, but at the end of the day it was absolutely fine. And then race morning, really excited. Ran out of time a little bit, so didn't do a proper warm-up. Poor on my part. But I was very ready, very excited and enthusiastic. So sick to be amongst like the best people in the world, and just ready to race them, see where I stood. So got into the water relatively early, went straight to the start line, tried to get a good position. And fortunately for me, Lucas Voits and Bakkegaard ended up sidling up next to me. So I was like, sweet, this is going to be the far side. Other fast swimmers on the other side, like Jan Stratman and Tom Bish. But I knew that this was going to be where the speed was, because Lucas Voits went to the Olympics of swimming back in the day. Daniel also always in the front pack. So I was like, okay, this is great for me. And this was where I think I made the first big mistake of my race. I went out quite hard. I was in line with Lucas for a fair amount of time. I had a good start, really good start. Knew that I wasn't going to try and lead him out or anything like that, so tried to sidle back onto Daniel's feet. That was still very quick, and I think I didn't do that fast enough. I probably should have gotten onto his feet earlier, or gone out a little bit slower, because I basically burnt quite a few matches doing that accidentally. Again, could have been the fact that I was over fresh, built up a bit of lactic or too much lactic, and then just started to really suffer. And then I started to go backwards real quick. So I lost his feet. Jan Stratman came round me, Tom Bish came round me, a fair few others came round me, Rudy Bomberg, Magnus Dietlev. I was like, oh crap, like I am out of this front group for sure. But kind of stuck in there, managed to find some feet. It was Magnus's feet, and just cracked on the best I could there, tried to recover from basically blowing up. I basically blew up in that first 500 meters and had to just bring it back to like an aerobic pace essentially to feel better again. Luckily, I could bring it back around, and by the first buoy, I kind of assessed the situation and realized that actually I wasn't too far off the front and it was okay. Swam for another 500 to a K and thought, actually, I'm in a really good aerobic condition right now. I might try and move my way up and see where I'm at, because I imagine the front group has gone and I'm probably just like hanging into the second group. So started to sidle up next to Magnus Dietlev and realized that actually the pace wasn't slow. Like when I pulled out of the draft and started going up the line a little bit, I was like, oh shit, actually no, this is a little bit tough. So once I'd like kind of made my way up all 7 foot of Magnus, I was like, nah, this is way too hard. So just embarrassingly sidled back onto his feet. It was fine, but yeah. Anyway, stayed on his feet for the rest of the swim, got out in a pretty good nick, and got into transition. Had to absolutely leg it after Magnus, because man, that guy can move. He is so quick through transition. It was nuts. But I was like, if he goes, I'm gone. I could be out of this, and before it even starts, because I just wanted to be at the front of the race for as long as possible, and that wasn't going to be possible if he's up and gone and I've missed the front group as well. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I basically came out of transition just behind him. You're allowed to be directly behind or not 12 meters back for the first 500 meters out of transition whilst you all shuffle around and sort yourself out. So did that, used all 500 meters, and then settled into the group. Magnus then proceeded to bugger off into the distance very quickly. I just didn't have any hope. I was in the line, we caught Lucas Voits, who was off the front after the swim, and I think that basically that disturbance within the group allowed Magnus to go. And that was fine. Like, I think it actually worked out really well for me, because essentially I was one of the guys in this chase pack that was able to do a bit of work, like, I guess, be at the front of that group every now and again. And I did the best I could to conserve my energy, because to be honest, I was a little bit worried about the hills. I didn't want to completely explode on the hills and then not be able to do the rest of the race. Needless to say, I managed to do a little bit of work in that group, rightly or wrongly, after the first main climb. And on the second lap, I started to feel that the pace had gone up a little bit when Rudy came through on the second lap. So I think we were all struggling to hold his wheel, because I don't know whether he attacked or was just riding really well, but it was really tough to stay there. And I was a fair few people back at this point. So I was thinking I was maybe like third or fourth in the line behind Jan Stratman and Daniel Bakkegaard, and then Rudy on the front. And when we went up the main climb, Rudy actually got a fair bit of a gap on us. And I was behind Daniel at this point, so third now. And I wasn't sure whether or not to commit to try and bridge or not. Daniel waved me through and I got to the front. And I was just like, why not? Like, I'm here to experience what I can, data collect, see what happens. And yes, to try and get a good position. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to see what it took to mix it up with the best guys in the business. So I sent it. I think I did 375 watts for about 12 minutes to eventually bridge the gap to Rudy. I think it took a little bit less than that, but in total, the whole effort up the climb and then to bridge was about 375 watts in, for 12 minutes. Pretty even pace, like, from the climb and then the bridge. But that ended up dropping Bakkegaard, Tom Bish, the Czech guy, and, sorry, I don't know his name, and Jan Stratman. So they dropped off the back of me. I bridged over to Rudy. And there was about a 30-second gap, I think. They then ended up recatching, because I just sat on Rudy then, because I was like, well, I've gassed myself trying to get here. I just need to try and recover. They eventually bridged back up about 10 minutes later, I think it was. And then I don't think that I quite was able to recover from that effort. Rudy was still riding quite strong. There was a couple of little hills. And then after we popped over the second to last hill before Solerberg, which, by the way, oh my Christ, I could not stop smiling going up that for the first time. Surreal experience, like quite emotional actually, because you go from like quite a high exertion to being a little bit lonely on the course sometimes here and there, just because you're concentrating, you're in your own little mindset, this, that and the other, to coming up to Solerberg with this epic crescendo of people and just oh my God, it was just an overwhelming sense of support. And I saw my parents there as well, which was amazing. But going up there, just could not stop smiling. Like all of us, I think, as athletes, were just smiling and like saying that was sick to one another as we passed. But then, yeah, after I went over that for the second time, my legs just went. Like, not cramp for the first time, but they just ran out of energy. So either I undercarbed or that effort that I put in to bridge over to Rudy just caught me out. And I then had to spend the next 25 minutes pretty much on my own before Jan Stratman caught me, because he was off the back of the other little group that came into T2 together. So I ended up coming to T2 with Jan Stratman and actually Leon Chevalier, who had caught from behind. And then it was all about the run and the marathon. And the marathon that I've done twice before and cramped severely both times. I was under strict instructions from Luke, do not go faster than 4-minute Ks. So off I trotted at 4-minute Ks. It was very lonely out on the canal, I'd say. Like there were support in some areas, like the Garmin stand and each of the aid stations. But all in all, I'd say that there was a lot of stretches that were quite lonely. And when you get halfway in or 25K in, it became like quite, because you're at such a depleted state as well, like you can keep on top of it to an extent, but you're tired. You've been on your feet a long time. My feet started hurting. My legs started hurting. Again, not necessarily cramp at this stage, just hurting. You've just done so much time with the legs and on the legs that it became tough. And I think that at that point I was going all right at the time. I was ticking along quite nicely. But mentally I was just like, just keep it going, keep going, keep going. Then after 25k, near the 30k mark, you start getting back into the crowds, which was great because my legs started falling apart again, just energy wise, and also a little bit of cramp because I think I got my hydration a little bit wrong. And then you start to suffer about 33k. So for the last 7 to 10k, you start going up a little hill, and I was sat comfortably in 8th place at this point, but my legs started going away from me, and I started doing the maths at how far back these other boys were who were closing in on me. And I was like, I don't think they can catch me, even if I'm running quite slow, because I had at one stage, like 2 to 4 minutes, but at this latter stage, about 2 minutes gap. So at 37k, I had about 2 minute gap to the 9th place. So I kind of like just egged myself on. The crowds were amazing and managed to trot home to 8th place in a time of 7 hours and 52 seconds. And I managed to run the whole marathon. I didn't stop, which is a massive achievement for me. I didn't cramp up fully. Like my legs were starting to go and there had to be cramp management, but overall just absolutely buzzing that I managed to do the whole thing. Yes, there were some mistakes in the race that probably cost me a little bit of time, but the result would have been the same no matter what, I think. There was no chance that I was getting 7th or above. They were just too far ahead. So even if I'd run what I think I can run in the marathon, which is a little bit faster, it wouldn't have made a difference. They were so much more further ahead. But I just managed to stick it in there, stick it out, and I was really proud of that because it was bloody hard. So anyone who's doing an Ironman, fair play. It's even harder if you're going out there for longer because the effort is still the same. So yeah, I would highly recommend that race. Highly, highly recommend it. Like the stadium at the end as well, unbelievable. The support, just second to none. Anyway, I hope you liked my little recap of Challenge Roth and the highs and lows of what I experienced in the full distance, the fastest full distance I've ever done, the second one in total. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight and some inspiration to do it for yourself. And yeah, I'll let you know what's coming up in the future, but stick around, hit subscribe, hit like, and I'll see you next time.